Removing the Goalposts. A blog by Mark Dennis. The desire to seek knowledge is high in our species, so much so that we've overpopulated the world just to see how many people it takes to start the extinction process. Bird identification is something that has been revolutionized over the years, from having to rely on field guides full of illustrations that look nothing like the bird, to today, where the field guides are excellent. Of course, they could be improved, and I'd argue that, with print-to-order being a thing now, new people might appreciate an alphabetical option or, by utilizing eBird data, a simplified field guide showing only the birds of their general area. Then there is the question of optics. Swarovski make great scopes and binoculars, nobody could argue that they don't. For the serious birder, to have the option to use Swarovski, or Leica or Zeiss is a given ambition, but such is the rapidly rising price of top-end binoculars, that the actual number of birders who can afford a pair is shrinking. With this glaringly obvious piece of information freely available to marketers, designers, and planning strategists, you'd think that a brand like Swarovski, or any of the other names, for that matter, might look to supply the bulk end of the market with a decent binocular at a reasonable price, but no. Instead, they all continually claim to make improvements to their models, seemingly to justify adding a naught to the price of the thing. Swarovski have now come out with the AX Visio, a binocular that can take a photo of that bird you're seeing, they say, and give you access to multiple species identifications using the ever-unreliable Merlin. In other words, all you'd have to do is point the binoculars and press a button to identify something, before going back to your junior word search and filling in the one that's been bothering you for an hour, that was cat, which then gives you a starter on mat. I think being able to take the photo is good, but you can guess how impressed I am at the idea of spoon-fed identification, and those people that might choose to use them for that purpose. I don't think that a device that identifies things is what a birder needs, beginner or otherwise, but the option to take a photo of what you see, yes, that would be good. The problem is a pair costs 6,729 Canadian dollars, plus 15% tax. Most birders would prefer to use that sort of money for booking long-distance flights to exotic places, rather than helping Swarovski's bank balance. I suspect that there will be a very limited market for the AX Visio, but some will buy them because some people have more money than sense. Another question might be how Swarovski will deal with paying out royalties to Merlin, and then their suppliers of images and recordings, perhaps on a per-reference system. Maybe that is how birders will be able to afford a pair, by cashing in on the free images previously donated to eBird and used by Merlin. If you were actually thinking, great, now I'll know what I'm looking at, just a reminder that you always could, all it takes is a field guide and a bit of effort, and not just being a species with opposable thumbs that can press a button. There, wasn't that a nice, balanced rant? A good start to 2024, which has been fairly birdy so far, with most of last year's star birds, in the south, lingering onto a New Year list. Apart from the first 2 days of the year, my birding has followed the regular visit a couple of spots daily routine, along with yard birding. I'm seeing a few and missing a few, which is good because it keeps me on my toes. I hit 100 species for the year by the 13th of January, purple sandpiper taking the honors. Sandra has been busy with YouTube videos, as I mentioned last time. We have our own channel, and it helps if you subscribe. It costs nothing, but it does put us nearer to being able to take some money off them, rather than have them benefit from our excellent vids. Who knows, if we get enough hits, I might be able to go in for a Swarovski AX Visio strap, or maybe stretch to a pair of eye cups. That's about as near as I'll ever get to a pair. The book of the birding year 2023 is still taking shape. I'd encourage anyone who birds a lot, takes photos, and can string 2 words together to do their own. Posting to Facebook is all well and good, but it is ephemeral, and things are lost once another load of posts buries them. The beauty of self-publishing through Amazon is that it doesn't matter if anyone buys a copy, although it's always nice if they do, and being able to put your book on your shelf and pull it down for a read at any time is pretty neat. I'm always happy to advise the budding writer. If you decide to give it a try, just contact me. Our prodigious book publishing has resulted in 14 novels, a total of 4 autobiographical birding books, 2 sight guides, and 16 birding travelogues covering trips to 12 countries. The novels include 3 series: the Nova Scotia Birder Mysteries, the D.I. Thompson Collection, and the Harvester's World. To find them, look in the book section on Amazon, using my name to search. For those who follow these things, we did a 3-volume omnibus comprising the first 3 Nova Scotia birder mystery novels. The Frigate Bird, Nor'easter, and Sea Glass are all to be found in the Nova Scotia Omnibus Edition, for Kindle on at $4.50. We also did the same with the D.I. Thompson novels, Cold-Hearted, On the Fly and Spiked. I was musing over the current suite of species available to the eBirding Observer when birding in Shelburne County in the winter. I'd say that 7 to 9 of the species for which no details are required, details means what it looked like, not what you were wearing or brand of coffee you bought, should be better catered for, reporting-wise. Here are my thoughts. Discuss. Eurasian widgeon is rare here, less than 1 a year. Wood duck is similarly rare in winter anywhere. American goshawk is notoriously underrecorded. They like to fly low, and only birds displaying during March-April are likely to be reliably seen. I think not having it reportable gives a false impression of the species' abundance, so I'd like to see it needing details, especially with Cooper's hawks having moved in. Rough-legged hawk has become very scarce. This is because their populations are cyclical, like snowy owls. Both should be checklist adds unless it's a year of abundance, although I'm not sure eBird offers such filter flexibility. Pine grosbeak is generally rare down here in the south. This might not always have been the case, historically, but there are few enough reports to make this a prime list ad contender. Common redpoll is an influx species and should be treated as such, therefore when there aren't any, eBird should require people to say what they saw when they claim one. Yellow-breasted chat is rare in Shelburne County. We don't have the rambling patches of scrub as in Yarmouth, and so don't get and keep yellow-breasted chats. You could add eastern bluebird to the list too. I can only think of a couple of winter records in recent years and, apart from seeing summer birds belonging to an apparently localized breeding population, they are a good find in Shelburne. At present, the tweaking of the filters is done by the respective eBird reviewers, but keeping tabs on individual county species populations to the nth degree isn't really a part of their remit. eBird needs to institute automated filters based on local dynamics. That way, when a species falls below a certain threshold, locally, the filter would adjust accordingly. I guess it will come eventually, but eBird has been the default provincial recorder for some years now and should be paying as much attention to functionality as to coming up with shiny new toys. Please be assured that I'm not being critical of our eBird reviewers here. Whenever I've flagged a species, they've duly considered whether it needed a filter tweak or not. Now we should talk swans, specifically mute. One showed up in Yarmouth and I had to really think hard about whether I went for a look. The reasons for that are numerous. I've caught many mute swans using my non-patented tease and yank method, which involves offering food from the hand, then grabbing their heads before vaulting on top of them. I didn't do this for fun, it was always to untangle them from fishing line, or other snags, or because they had lead poisoning and I'd have to take them to a vet. In the course of interacting with an ungrateful swan, you can expect to be shat on in spectacular fashion. I'm pretty sure they stock up on fluid when they see what you're up to. Expect also to be whacked around the head by a wing. They say they can break a man's arm, but I think that only applies to librarians or something. I never had anything break and have been whacked by swans numerous times. Mute swans carry a louse that moves like grease lightning, finds a way up your sleeves and then looks for a safe haven with little regard for good manners or impropriety. The other thing they do, when sitting on the passenger seat of a Land Rover, all trussed up, so they don't wander, is wander. Houdini could have learned a thing or two from them. Mute swans don't move much in their lives, generally only when the water freezes or they have to molt, and then normally only short distances. Those habits alone make you wonder where the recent proliferation of Nova Scotia records, 3 in 3 years, come from. Looking at eBird for June-July during the past 10 years, it seems there is a population that stretches north into New Hampshire, so I guess it's one of those birds that comes. Despite everything, I did go and say hello. It didn't answer though. They don't. The clue is in the name. I had to laugh later when the news went out as a proper rare bird alert. And not just on our Southwest channel. Somehow, a mute swan in Nova Scotia doesn't feel proper, and if I end up breaking 300 in the province this year, I'll not be happy unless I get at least 301. In a postscript to the swan event, if you want to call it that. Local hunters saw one of the birders' posts and said they'd be along to get it the next day. Apart from all swans being excluded from the list of species harvestable, mute swans are technically the property of the current king. This was granted to the crown in the 12th century and remains in place today, so, if the swan gets shot and if we're going to stay true to 12th century tradition, which seems to be the last time the hunting regs were amended, we might get someone being hung, drawn and quartered on Main Street, Yarmouth as a punishment. An event like that might even make the salt wire. Northeast Point on Cape Island is usually a bit of a mess, thanks to the local swamp dwellers' liking for chucking their trash out their car or truck windows. To be fair, using the bins would require them to get out and walk 6 paces, but I'm digressing again. Anyway, at high tide, a couple of horned grebes that have wintered there sometimes feed close to the parking lot, especially the first bit before the slipway. Sandra and I dropped by recently and I got some nice, monochrome shots of one of them. In the yard, we recently had a shy rusty blackbird for a couple of days, although it wasn't there throughout and didn't venture much into daylight. On Sherrose Island I came across a feeding female-type red crossbill, a bunch of pine siskins and some nice purple finches. I had been hoping for a repeat of last year when Sandra and I had a pine grosbeak there. I think that brings us up to date. Soon, the proper winter should usher in, and more time is spent indoor than out. The later it is coming, in theory, the shorter the winter. It is likely to be an El Niño year, meaning climatically a mess. Such things tend to dictate weirdness amongst the birds, so perhaps the blast that was birding Nova Scotia in 2023 will be exceeded. In some cases, it all depends on what sort of hurricane season we have. Just an update on the last post where I referred to the friendly year list rivalry between counties. Kings weighed in with a late says Phoebe, which only recently came to light. That put us level, but then a visiting birder finally posted his shots of Barrow's goldeneye on Cape Island and, although we missed them ourselves, it was one more for Shelburne in 2023, post-eBird validation. Here are some nice photos of both scorpions to look at. Goodbye until the next blog. See the text of this and my other blog posts on https://capesablebirding.wordpress.com.